Hey guys, CG Inferno here today, and today's video review is for AI Limit, which is a new anime action RPG game which takes on the Souls-like genre in a post-apocalyptic world. So in this review, I'm going to be mainly going over the story, the gameplay, the improvements that can be made, my overall experience, and whether or not the game is worth buying or not at its current price. Now, to preserve the playing experience for people, I won't dive too much into detail about the story and just give a brief overview and my thoughts on the story as well. So, the story of AI Limit puts you in the shoes of a warrior named Arissa who wakes up not remembering who she is and where she comes from. The world has pretty much collapsed and is overrun by creatures named Necros, and where humanity is at its end and the last remaining humans are pretty much in a city called Haven's Well. Arissa sets out on her journey to recover her memories, and throughout the game you will meet various NPCs throughout the journey who give a glimpse into what's going on in the world and their own struggles. Now, like most Souls games, these NPCs that you meet throughout the story, they do have their own storyline, or side quest as you want to call them, which can affect the ending that you get in the game. There are 3 endings in the game, and to get all of them you would at least need 2 playthroughs. If you really want to do it in one playthrough, essentially you're going to have to make up backup saves, and when you reach a certain point in the story, that is where you want to at least start making your saves so you can at least just load them back up and do it again. Overall, during my 2 playthroughs of the game, I did find the story to be quite good for the most part, though some parts of the story definitely needed more work. Now, in terms of playtime, my first playthrough was about 18 hours. And my second run, which is the true ending, as I would call it, was about 12 hours, which was also done on new games. So I didn't go into a second run with like all my abilities and stuff. Now, as for the NPC side storylines, they were pretty good for the most part, and some of them definitely did get me invested. Though I do feel like a few of them were just added in for just adding to the game. Like, I didn't really find them too interesting or anything. They're just there for the sake of being there. And with that, I would probably give the story an overall 7 out of 10 at the moment. Gameplay in AI Limit pretty much follows the standard Souls formula, which is becoming a bit stale in my opinion. Well, I still enjoy it for the most part. I do wish that some games trying to innovate a bit more, or like try and do like their own type of combat or something. I say this because the gameplay for AI Limit can be a bit basic at times when obtaining certain abilities later on. For example, during my playthrough, when I got a scythe weapon, that was literally my go-to weapon, mainly because it had good range, good damage, good specials as well, and it literally just shredded through everything. Now, obviously in the game there's a variety of weapons you can get, and these can be obtained through either buying them through the shop, or when you defeat a boss you can also get their, I guess you can call it souls or nuclei as they call it in the game, which you can exchange for their weapons. Now, in terms of enemies, there are a variety amount of enemies in the game, although when you go into the later stages of the game, you'll start to see the same enemies again, maybe with like a different color palette as well, and a lot more HP, and them allowing to like deal tons more damage than that they should, in my opinion. In terms of abilities now, there are a fair amount of abilities in the game. These are split into 4 sections. So you do have the shield that you get quite early on. You have the parry, which is like the first ability you get. You have another type of dodge, which if you do at the right moment, you leave, say, like an image of yourself, and that will deal damage to an enemy, like a little stagger to them. And then you also have another one, which is like a piercing effect. So essentially you'll stab yourself and then you'll gain an ability to do like extra damage when you're attacking an enemy with a normal weapon, which honestly, that was my main go-to ability in the game. And it made a lot of enemies and bosses like very trivial, to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't really be using this as much, but it was that good of a weapon. Now, you can use this in conjunction with, say, imbuing your weapon with fire or lightning. You can use these can be done essentially by using items or learning the spells in the game. Now, with the spells, there are a fair amount of spells in the game as well. However, I don't feel that all of them will probably be practical per se. Like, there's a fair amount, and if you want to use them, you have to level up your spirit, which is essentially like your magic. So if you played a lot of Souls games, you know how this would work. And some of these spells required quite a bit of spirit, to the point I said, you know what, I don't think it's even worth me upgrading that much. And it just got to the point I was just like, okay, you know what, I'll just hit like a certain limit where I can just use certain abilities and call it a day. Now, obviously this gives you the freedom to do whatever build you want to do. If you want to go for a magic build, you want to go for a strength build, Verity, you know, there's a whole variety you can do. But I felt for the most part, you know, you can just get through the game just by attacking your sword pretty much, and like not caring which build you go for. Obviously it's good to even out your attributes, but again, you know, it just depends on the person. So for me, I wasn't too fussed on what type of build I was going for in this one, especially my 2 playthroughs. Now, in terms of difficulty for the game, I would honestly say it's at its right spot. It's not too hard and it's not too easy as well. Obviously there will be some enemies that I felt have too much HP and sometimes can nuke you with like 2 to 3 hits. I have a fair amount of super armor as well sometimes, but when you're playing Souls-like games, you just come to know like all this bullshit that comes to be thrown around you. So, you know, that was, I was just coming in thinking, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna expect something stupid like that in the game, and it was in the game. Obviously, it didn't hinder my progress that much. Obviously, I just had to think a bit more with certain enemies. I can like aggro them separately so that no other enemies can attack as well, because in this game, if you've got 2 or 3 multiple enemies coming to attack you, 9 times out of 10 you're just going to die instantly, because they actually deal a lot of damage. In terms of boss difficulty, honestly, I would say it's good. I felt it actually was quite easy for the most part, except for like a few bosses near the end, but most of them are very straightforward. And parry literally most of their attacks. You can dodge all of the attacks if you're really good with that as well. And if you're using the shield ability as well, you can just negate a fair amount of damage as well. So yeah, in terms of, I guess, balancing as well, you know, this one is more on this easier side for the most part, but you definitely can still get caught out quite a bit. Overall, my experience with the combat is still good. You know, bearing in mind, I just used a certain weapon and just called it a day, mainly because I say if it's not broken, don't fix it. So yeah, there's a lot to be explored in this, a lot to be used, a lot of build to be done. So, you know, when people play it, I'm sure there are going to be some even more busted builds in the future. But I felt for the most part that the team actually done a pretty good job with the gameplay and the enemy varieties and the difficulty as well. Exploration in AI Limit is good for the most part, if not even great. The game has a fair number of areas that you can visit and a decent amount of hidden areas that you need to visit as well if you're going for the true ending. Most of the areas are decent sized and have a fair number of collectibles to collect and a decent amount of enemies that you'll encounter as well, including like some bosses as well. I would say mini bosses. Now, navigating these areas are not too hard, but some of these areas you can get lost a bit easily. And as for the hidden areas, I would say that they're good in terms of where they are and how you access them, except for one, which is probably like my most hated thing about the game. Obviously in this video I can't show it because they don't allow you to show stuff pretty much at the end of the game, but essentially this last hidden area, you're basically playing a platformer, and if you mess up, you're literally just gonna die and you have to start from pretty much from the top. And playing with controller has probably been like my most frustrating thing with this game, to the point I was really considering just using keyboard and mouse for that part. But in the end, I did stick out with the controller. But yeah, I feel a lot of people might be a bit annoyed with it. Obviously, there'll be some people that will just find it very easy as well. But, you know, it's obviously depends on the person. And my personal experience, it wasn't the best of exploration in that area. But in terms of like the whole game in itself, yeah, I felt that the team done a good job overall with all the areas, the enemy placements, where you can go, what you can access, what you can't access, and the amount of collectibles that you can find and the hidden ones you can find as well. You know, for the most part, I actually enjoyed it. Now, in terms of customer characterization, there is a fair amount in the game. You will be getting a lot of equipment that you can equip which will change the character's look, and then there are some shops as well in the game that you can find more hairstyles and stuff, which obviously give you like different attributes and stuff. So mine might be good for lightning resistance, one might be good for fire, some will be good for pierce. So there's a fair amount that you can go and collect. Obviously these will cost quite a bit, These can all be collected throughout the game. I did manage to get all of them, and yeah, I actually enjoyed it. While I've been praising AI Limit for what it's been trying to do in the Souls genre, there are definitely some issues that I came across when playing it. Now, one of the main issues was performance, which honestly is probably becoming the norm these days with PC gaming, which is a shame, because honestly it's getting to the point where I'm actually considering just asking stuff for my PS5 now, which I would have never really considered years back. But yeah, performance in the game for the most part is good, though with certain enemies, particularly one, when trying to fight it, my god, the frames was just dying. It was dying for me, you know, and it got to the point I was even dying from the enemy because it was that laggy. And I'm like, no, this can't be in the full game, man. Now, obviously, bearing in mind, I was playing this pretty early on, and they have patched the game quite a bit. So hopefully that is fixed, because if it's not fixed, good lord, they are going to get rinsed for it. In terms of music, I'll be honest, the music is probably like the least favorite thing about me in this game. Like, I cannot remember anything memorable about it. Obviously, there was some okay tracks here and there, but I know it's like post-apocalyptic world and everything's supposed to be dark, gloomy and all that, but you know, when you're facing some enemies or some bosses, you expect like the music to like kick in or amp up to hype you up and everything, but I never really got that with this game, you know, which is a bit of a shame. Maybe for like the final boss it was pretty good, but yeah, the music was like, I guess you could say, non-existent pretty much in this, which is pretty quite a shame, honestly. The voice acting as well, for the most part, I found okay, but then in certain parts I was kind of questioning. I was like, yo, what's happening here with the voice acting, you know? And it got to the point I was like, man, this is pretty on the low side, you know. Obviously I don't try and dunk on English VAs and everything, because I know it's hard for them as well. Obviously some of them make it hard for themselves because of the way they are, but not all of them. But I do feel like sometimes they do need to get another take, another opinion on like their voice lines or how they deliver their voice lines. But that is like a whole nother topic in itself. But for the most part, yeah, the voice acting definitely could have used a bit more work. But overall, you know, the game is still solid. I know it definitely is rough around the edges, but you know, there's a hidden gem in there for the most part. Now, with all that said and done, it's time to wrap up the video. So overall, AI Limit is a decent game with a good amount of ideas that were executed well, though it does fall in some areas where other games generally excels. Voice acting I already talked about, music I already talked about, performance I already talked about. Hopefully this can all be ironed out through patches, or mainly the performance and stuff. Voice acting and the music, well, I mean, they can technically patch it, but you know, that's a whole nother topic in itself. For the most part, I would say the devs done a good job, especially during my time playing it, mainly because when going for the true ending, actually that boss was bugged and it could not be killed, and they actually patched it out quite quickly, which is kudos to them, because I know some games where they just wouldn't patch it out until God knows when. For one, it happened with Atelier Lumia. I couldn't finish that because it was just freezing on the loading screen, and it only fixed it when it released, and I finished like a good week or so beforehand. But we're on about AI Limit, and for the most part, I would say AI Limit is a good game. Now, for the price it's going for and what you can get out of it, honestly, I could still recommend it, although I know some people might be a bit hesitant on this because they're like, oh, another Souls like anime waifu game, you know, it's Code Vein 2.0 or something. To be honest, I don't really call it Code Vein 2.0. Yeah, it has a fair amount of similar aesthetics about it, but I honestly probably enjoyed this a bit more than Code Vein, which, you know, Code Vein, I had my own issues with that game anyway. But yeah, AI Limit, honestly, I would still recommend it. Overall, I would give the game a 7 out of 10. Definitely some issues to fix. Now, if they go and do like a sequel or another game similar to it, hopefully they take this into consideration, and you know, hopefully they actually do well, you know. So Again, thank you for CE Asia for providing me a key. I think that's how you pronounce the publisher's name. If not, I apologize. And yeah, this has been your boy Inferno. If you enjoyed the review, let me know down below. If you got any more questions about the game and stuff, you know, do comment down below or hit me up on Twitter and I'll try and get back to you. But with all that said and done, I will see you guys in the next video.